Welcome back, whiskey fans. We've got a fun and seemingly incredible value whiskey to look at today. This is Siren Bay 18-year-old. So first things first, we have to acknowledge that that is a wonderful label. Really love the artwork that's gone into that. And you can see on the back there that it says Atom Labs, Atom Brands, which the more informed UK whiskey enthusiasts out there will know means that it's a Master of Malt product. Siren Bay 18-year-old, it is a Master of Malt independent bottling, but they don't openly say so, but it is. So this is a great physical presentation in terms of the label and the bottle and the branding, but what is not very good about this is that it doesn't really have a tamper-proof seal, because when you get this, it comes with this mermaid's tail thing on the top. And I don't know if this is a common problem or not, but my bottle, I didn't even try to peel it off carefully, but these little bits that are meant to provide a tamper-proof security seal to tell you that the contents are the intended contents and it's all intact, they just come off. Which, in my opinion, is a massive problem that really needs to be addressed. Because there's nothing stopping anyone from, well, what I've just done there, sealed bottle. So my advice to you guys out there would be to not buy this on secondary. If you see this on an auction site, let it go, because it's only a matter of time until someone fills one of these up with Laphroaig Select, re-glues it, and sends it to auction. It's not the first time that a distillery has had a problem with tamper-proof seals. Famously, I think it's probably in the late 90s, early 2000s, probably early 2000s, they had an issue for years where you could remove the shrink wrap. I think people used to heat them up, refill an empty bottle, and then slip the shrink wrap back on, which I would guess that people buying vintage Ardbeg on secondary market probably aren't aware of. But tamper-proof seals like this, we deserve better. As for the presentation of the contents on this whiskey, which if you buy it direct from Master of Malt, as I did, not a sponsor, the presentation of what's in the bottle is really what matters. It's declared as a Highland whiskey, which really doesn't narrow things down at all. It really, if you know anything about the classification of Scotch whisky regions, saying that something is Highland basically just tells you that it's not from Islay or the Lowlands. It's bottled at 45.7% ABV. It has no guarantee of natural colour or non-chill filtration, which in my opinion is shameful behaviour from Master of Malt, but that's what they've decided to do. I have read rumours online, and if you have a quick Google you can see for yourself, there are rumours that this is a non-disclosed Lachig 18-year-old. I've also seen rumours that this is Talisker 18-year-old. Either of which of those whiskies for £75, which is the full price for this, would be amazing value. Assuming, of course, that it's not a lacklustre batch of either of those distilleries, as is often the case with independent bottlings. Independent bottlings can be absolutely fantastic. A lot of the best whiskey that you can get is independent bottlings because you get better presentations, but it has to be said that a lot of whiskey which is released from definitely certain distilleries, a lot of what they release to the blenders and the independent bottlers is stuff that they don't want to put their own name to, so you have to be careful. Talking about price, the full price of this is £75 here in the UK. I actually got this on offer for £55, so if you're interested in this, it is worth having a look, having a little wait perhaps to see if it does go on offer, because it has happened, it may happen again. And I'll be honest, buying a whiskey of unknown origin for £75, even if it is 18 years old, didn't seem like an incredible deal for me, but taking £20 off the price certainly helped ease my decision. Because at £55 these days, it doesn't have to be the best, when these days we're used to seeing, frankly, shite 18-year-old whiskey for £150. So, Siren Bay, 18-year-old whiskey from somewhere. Let's get some in the glass and see what we've got. I'll just be careful to stick that down so I can sell it later. Is that natural colour? Maybe, probably not. They don't care. Why should we? Siren Bay, 18, on the nose. Quite a light and gentle medicinal peat. Bandages, germaline, which, like medicinal salves, is quite often something that I get from 18-year-old heavily peated whiskies. Quite salty, which ties in with that Siren Bay theme, I suppose. Appley, fruity maltiness. A little bit of orange blossom and some light vanilla on the nose. It's all very nice. It's a very pleasant whiskey. But I have to say that it's a little bit light and a little bit bland. Actually surprisingly bland for 45.7%. And some people will say it's 18 years old. Whiskey mellows out after that amount of time, but I think it's gone beyond that. It's milder than it should be. I think that 18-year-old whiskey should be refined and polished, but it should also be bursting with flavour. You get different flavours from a whiskey which is rested for 18 years, but it shouldn't be as limp as this. Very pleasant though. It has to be said, it offers something beyond what you would get from your average 10 or 12-year-old whiskey. But as is the case with a lot of 18-year-old whiskey today, it just doesn't have that intensity of flavour that we used to get from such age statements. Let's see how it tastes. On the palate, quite ashy, fruity, medicinal peat. Again, it is quite light, sweet and gentle. A little bit of a note of peat fire in there. You can definitely taste the peat. It's not a proper full flavoured peat bomb, but the peat is there with notes of peat fire and more medicinal notes coming out with kind of notes of bandages and iodine. A little bit of a beach bonfire note as well. It is light. The flavours are not particularly intense, but it is quite peat forward. We know that this is not an Islay, but it is very Islay-like, despite being quite light. I think that the flavours that you get on the palate of this are not quite as light as the nose, but you do kind of get the feeling that this has possibly been aged a little bit too far and mellowed out a little bit too much, which may possibly explain how Master of Malt got hold of this for such a good price and how they're able to sell it to us for 75 quid or 55 quid. I think that if you give this whiskey time and hold it on your palate for a little bit, it does build up a little bit of momentum on the late palate. Again, a reason to hold your whiskey on your tongue for as long as you can. You get more flavour for less cash. And in the case of some slightly milder, weaker whiskies like this one, it's just a requirement to get the most out of it that you can. Gonna have one more sip and look at the finish. Long, lingering finish with lots of sweet peat and pleasant salinity. I'd actually say that it's a really decent finish, considering that it is a little bit mild on the aromas. It kind of gives you the impression of like a 43% slightly handicapped presentation on the aromas. And the flavours that you get on the palate are not particularly explosive either, but it has a really nice, long, decent, robust finish. All in all, a decent whiskey, which is well worth £55, maybe worth 75. It's a fun one, but I was perhaps expecting a little bit more. I'd say that it's perhaps a little bit misleading to describe this as heavily peated, because while it probably is made from heavily peated malt, in fact it's a little bit light. The experience in general is not particularly intense. In fact, it's a little bit light on flavour in general. It actually reminds me, and you may remember these reviews if you've been with this channel for a long time, I reviewed an 18-year-old Islay whiskey which was sold by Lidl supermarket here in the UK, and they sold the stuff for £50 for an 18-year-old Islay. It was only 40%, it was chill filtered. It was possibly worth the money in terms of trying an 18-year-old Islay, but other than that, it was a bit pants. And this reminds me a little bit of that. It's kind of that, yes, it might be an 18-year-old whiskey, but because they're substandard batches, substandard casks, and that's why they've been moved on to the independent bottlers, it's just that little bit light on flavour. Yes, I do think that this is better than that 40% stuff that I had from Lidl, but because it is that little bit handicapped and that little bit light, it does remind me of those bottlings. So what do we think this is? Siren Bay. They're obviously giving us clues as to what it is, or are they giving us clues as to what they want us to think it is? Because they say it's Highland, we know it's not Islay. Giving it a name like Siren Bay, is that an anagram? I don't think so. But realistically, what heavily peated island or at least coastal distilleries have we got? There's Jura, Talisker, Lechig. I'm sure there are other coastal heavily peated distilleries. There's not a hope in hell that this is Toravaig, because they've not been around long enough to make an 18-year-old whiskey. But I have seen some people suggesting that this might be kind of substandard batches from Lechig, heavily peated Tobermory. I don't believe for a second that this is. I think it's far inferior to a Lechig 18. It doesn't have the heft, the maltiness, the creaminess that you get from a Lechig. In short, my recommendation, if you're considering paying £75 for this, thinking that it's a Lechig 18, would be to add that little bit of extra cash and get the Lechig 18. It's worth the extra and you won't be disappointed. So bearing in mind that this is a Highland whiskey, which Highland doesn't include Islay. Islay is its own category, its own region. We know that this is not going to be Islay whiskey, but I would say that this does remind me a little bit of the modern incarnation of Laphroaig 18. And if you haven't seen my review of the modern re-release of Laphroaig 18, I think that that's a little bit on the anemic side as well. It's just an absolute shadow of its former self, and for that reason I think that this is kind of close, same ballpark. So while I would say that this is a suitable alternative to the modern Laphroaig 18, the problem obviously being that I don't particularly like the new Laphroaig 18. But if you guys out there, if anyone did enjoy the new Laphroaig 18 and you can get this, I think you'd probably like this as well, because it's not that far off. Talisker 18 is the other one that I've heard rumours when people are talking about this, and I think that's probably where I'd place my guess. It even has that same chill filtered clarity and slightly weird orange glow to it. And tasting it, it does actually remind me of some of the recent bottles of Talisker 18 that I've had, which are getting lighter on flavour and less impressive, as well as more expensive. Now, regarding the fact that this looks very, very chill filtered, and it also looks a little bit artificially coloured, I don't know how common it is for distilleries to filter and colour a whiskey before selling it to an independent bottler, but this really does have that slightly hobbled, chill filtered, muted profile that Talisker 18 has these days. But again, if you are a fan of Talisker 18, including the recent not so good batches, then I think that this is a cheap alternative, so have at it. But really, for the price, why aren't you getting the Lechig? So there we have it. That pretty much sums up my review of Siren Bay 18. And I don't want to be too harsh, but it kind of falls in line with a lot of my experiences with that boutique whiskey company releases from Master of Malt. I think that it's rare that you get an absolutely shocking one, but they tend to underwhelm me a little bit. I think that with this whiskey here, It's more than worth £55. I think that for £75 it's possibly asking a little bit much. It seems to me like it's decent whiskey that's been put into okay casks, but probably not the best. I think that this is slightly anemic spirit that someone at the distillery probably had high hopes for, and they decided to leave it in the casks for a full 18 years, and probably when they've tasted it, they've been a bit underwhelmed and decided to palm it off to an independent bottler because it's just not had the heft to go the full 18 years, which can really knock the intensity out of whiskey. I think that if you are a fan of like the new Laphroaig 18 or the current Talisker 18, then this might appeal to you. Or if you're a fan of lighter whiskies in general, if you're the kind of person that doesn't mind like a 40% ABV peated whiskey, then you'd probably really enjoy this, especially if you can get it on a discount like I did. But for me personally, I wanted a little bit more. It is cheap though in today's market, and it will appeal to some of the aforementioned people with the aforementioned disclaimers. But I think I will enjoy this bottle and then probably not buy another. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you think about this one, and do your experiences with the Master of Malt independent bottlings match mine? Let me know. See you next time. Cheers.